this session here is about, so that is opportunity types, onboarding, restrictions, and promotion. Essentially, what we're talking about is, okay, how do you create different types of opportunities for different scenarios, and what is the volunteers' experience of that? How does that affect the volunteers' experience and the things that they have to do, and you have to do, I suppose. There's plenty of help in the system. There is, if you go to the help menu, you probably know there's kind of quick start videos. There's a whole kind of library we're actually renewing them all bit by bit at the moment. The whole library of videos in there. Also, you've got help tips throughout the system, which look like that there. And you've also, in the top right hand corner, you've got the question mark there, which will actually give you help topics related to the page that you're looking on. So if you ever look in the top right hand corner, hit the question mark, you're creating an opportunity or something you're not sure, hit the question mark, and you can see videos and information about the thing that you're actually trying to do. What we're going to cover in this masterclass, I won't read through all these, but like I said, it's essentially all the things that the different settings that you can do when you're creating an opportunity and how they affect the volunteer. Okay, so the first bit we're going to look at is one opportunity or many. Okay, and it's a question I get quite often in training when people are, well, it's in training support as well, I suppose, and people are not sure. So one opportunity or many. So if we take the scenario A, okay, we've got a food bank. Some of the volunteers are working in a food bank where they're sorting. Picture this: you're in a food bank, you're sorting food out, and people have donated, getting them ready to distribute to I don't know whether it's to certain shops or pickup points or people's houses. Some of the volunteers will be packing food into boxes. Some of them will be delivering food to different pickup points. And some of the volunteers are checking sell-by dates. So how many opportunities do we think scenario A could be? Do we think it's one opportunity? Does anyone think it's one opportunity? Anyone think it's one opportunity? What do you think, Rachel? You haven't got a mic. Okay. Anybody? Sorry, no worries, Rachel. No worries. We've set them over and wait while we try and figure out your IT.
I would say it's one opportunity because we've got food banks that do all of those things in various different roles. And we put it under more than that.
Yep. Okay. So you got one opportunity. Does anyone think it's more? Pipe up, because I can't see your hands going up or anything. So does anyone think it's more than one opportunity?
I wonder if it would be more than one because you'd want to do different checks for the person who would be driving as part of the delivering, possibly. But I suppose that depends on various different things. But I would have thought maybe more than one, maybe two.
Maybe two. Any other inputs? Anyone else think more than two?
I would potentially put it in more than two because of the times that they might need to, or no, that would be sessions, wouldn't it? I'm feeling more than one, but yeah.
More than one, yeah. Well, I suppose we break it down. So if you ever think about it, there's kind of three things we're going to come on to in a minute, which kind of define whether you should choose one or more opportunities. If you imagine that you've got some volunteers who are sat there sorting out the actual food. So they've got it in a big warehouse or something like that, and they're sorting food out. You got other volunteers packing the food into boxes. Well, again, that could be part of one opportunity. I think these first two could be part of one opportunity. I mean, you could say, well, maybe they start and finish at different times or this and that, but I'd assume not. I'd assume, you've got one session, they're there for like 4 hours, whatever it is, and they could be sorting the food, getting it ready for distribution, and also packing the food into boxes. That definitely could just be one opportunity. Then you've got this one here. Other volunteers will be delivering the food, pickup points. Wow. That's different, isn't it?
That requires DBS.
Yeah, it would probably require DBS. And it'd probably be at different times as well. I can't imagine the person turning up here. It's a very different thing, isn't it? So you imagine trying to describe that to a volunteer and then being able to picture what they're going to be doing on the day. Then they turn up thinking they're doing these first two things, sorting out, and then you say, oh yeah, no, actually you're going to be delivering the food. It's a very different thing that you're asking the person to do. I think it could be at least two, and And then you got some volunteers checking sell-by dates. I'm guessing this fourth one probably could be wrapped up in the first two, you know, so 1, 2, and 4 points probably could be one opportunity, because they're probably going to start and finish at the same times. There's no, and you're doing a similar kind of thing, you know, physically you're doing a similar kind of thing, whether you're reading sell-by dates or whether you're putting things into boxes. Where it's, I don't think you could encapsulate that within one opportunity and one opportunity description where you could cover those 3 points. But it'd be weird to try and squeeze in this third driving point in the middle there. Oh yeah, by the way, you could be doing something completely different, which is driving, which probably will start and end at different times, and like you say, DBS, and there'll be other requirements there. So personally, I think it could be, it's definitely 2, because 1, 2, and 4 could be at a push could be squeezed into one opportunity, and number 3 definitely would be a separate opportunity. So it's definitely 2, potentially 3. Now, there's no right or wrong answer. I mean, there's more, as we spoke about, there's more variables related to this. You know, like I said, you can say, well, the person checking the sell-by dates, they come and go at different times because of the deliverers compared to the people who sort the food out. Well, if they come and go at different times, and again, that's have to be a different opportunity. Okay, because they're coming and, you know, it's different times, there's different shifts for that particular checking the sell-by dates. So there is other follow-on questions that would be able to allow us to identify exactly how many, but at the very least it'd be 2. I agree. Scenario B, librarians. So all the volunteers are doing the same type of tasks. They're all sorting books, etc. We all know what a librarian does pretty much. Okay, the locations are across 3 libraries across the city. Do we think this? How many opportunities do we think this could be? Anyone want to hazard a guess or pick names out? Are you going to make me pick? Oh, someone's got. Whoever put their hand up there, you can pipe up.
Yeah, I was thinking I'd say 3 because of the 3 locations. Because if you were to group it into one opportunity, then someone searching for something local to them, it might not pop up because there's only one pinpoint on the opportunity for one of those areas, as far as I'm aware. So you might not get the best recruitment if you didn't separate it out. So my thoughts is probably having it as 3 separate ones would be ideal.
Yeah. Anybody else want to add to that? Anyone else? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that was
I agree.
thought too. Overall piping in now, Rachel. Sorry, you go ahead.
No, just I've sorted my IT issues out. Sorry. Yeah, I agree, because you've got 3 things and potentially 3 different people managing them as well. So I would do it with 3 individual ones.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it'd have to be because of the 3 locations. It would have to be. The issue we sometimes have, I come across this quite often when someone says, "Oh, it's working. It's like 20 points across the city," but they want to manage it as one opportunity. That's always you're left in a situation where you're either saying, "Okay, well, I either create 20 opportunities," which is better for the volunteer because they can search and stuff and find the opportunity that's nearest to them. Because they are different, you know, there are different locations that they're having to go through. And you're absolutely right in the point you made is, you know, one of the most common kind of searches that the system will do for you by default when you go to the search page is by distance from where the volunteer lives. So the volunteer wants to know which is more beneficial, which library is closest to them. That's the one they're most interested in volunteering for, usually. Distance is quite a key thing. So I would say that would be 3 opportunities. The sometimes the scenario they come up against, which is not as clear cut, is like I say, if you got 20 across the city, maybe it's 20 information points, for example, and you got some volunteers telling tourists about the city or whatever it is. Maybe imagine it's York and you've got kind of 20 volunteer spots around York where they're all kind of helping tourists and this, that, and the other. Well, that one's a bit more hard cut. When you could create the 20 opportunities, but they're probably being likely. You're probably more likely to create the one opportunity, and for the location of it, you would put in the location of York, the city, which means it's across this region. But consequence of doing that, you've got one opportunity, which makes it easy to manage, I suppose, because all the volunteers are on the one opportunity, although you don't necessarily know exactly what information points they're at. The key thing is you've still got to communicate that to the volunteers and let them know exactly what points they've got to go to, because they're no longer individual opportunities with a single location. It's an opportunity with a location which is across York, and you've got 20 information points in there. So this is doable. I've seen people do it before with marathons is another good example of it. So if you imagine you have a marathon where you've got the water stations and there's like 20 water stations around, you probably don't want the volunteers to go to a central point and then go to their water station because it could be 10 miles away. So you would tell the volunteers to go to the water station that's been assigned to them. They go directly there. So, but they still want to manage it as one opportunity. So what they tend to do is they create the one opportunity, and then they would upload a document showing a map of the city and showing all the different, water point 1, water point 2, water point 3. And then they would allocate them to the volunteers, after they've joined the opportunity. Okay, you're on water point 17. Can you see that? Make sure you download the map and see where it is. Okay, no problem. So you're still, but you're still having to communicate where the volunteer has to go to if you're going to do it that way. Okay, so there are scenarios which fall outside of this where sometimes you have to do that, but you're still left with that fundamental thing. Well, how do you tell the volunteer how do you inform them where to go to? Okay. Which if they're 3 separate opportunities, you don't have to. It's obviously just when you're creating the opportunity, you're saying the location of each of the 3 opportunities, 3 libraries. Does that make sense? Any questions over that? Scenario C, litter picking. So the volunteers are picking up litter in 3 local parks. They all meet at the same point. How many opportunities do we think that might be?
Go for 1 for that one.
Okay, we've got 1. There, Jim, 1. Anyone raising 1?
Yeah, I agree 1.
Yeah, agree 1. Yep, and I'd agree. It's 1, isn't it? Because it doesn't matter the fact where they have to go after they've met. Well, that's kind of insignificant, really, unless it's just like 10 miles away and they walk on foot, but it's insignificant. Hopefully the person running the opportunity's thought of that. If they're meeting at the same point, then it doesn't matter so much. The same, like if you take the example of the marathon, if you did want all the volunteers to come to one point and then you gave them all high vis jackets and some other bits and bobs, and then you got a minibus and you drove them around and dropped them off at the water stations. Well, that could just be one opportunity with one meeting location. The volunteer doesn't need to know exactly where their water point is because you're going to take them there. All they need to know is where do I have to be and at what time. At the start, okay, here's the meeting point. So it'd be one opportunity, and you're right. This again would be one opportunity. They meet in one point, and then they get bussed off or they walk, whatever it is, to their actual part they're going to be cleaning up. There we go. So the 3 things you need to consider when it's one or many is the location, the time, are the times different, and activity. Now there is some examples, we're not going to cover it, but someone kind of touched on it before, where you can use sessions where they might have one opportunity, but then it made up of like 10 sessions, and you'll name in certain sessions depending on the location or something like that. So I've seen them before when they say, oh, it's a wildlife trust park or something like that. It's like an area, like a, you know what I mean, like a country park kind of area. And you might have certain meeting points across that country park. So sometimes I've seen them. Yeah, I've seen variations on that of how they communicate those locations to the volunteers. But fundamentally, it comes down to location. Is the location the same? Is the time the same? Is the activity the same? But as I just mentioned there, you can adjust sessions sometimes to make it clear to them, oh, by the way, this session here is at that meeting place over there. And the next session below it that you need to, oh, that's at this other meeting place there. Okay. But you've still got to communicate with the volunteer where those meeting places are, although you can separate them with sessions. But we'll come on to that in a bit more detail shortly. And obviously the activity is the third one. If the activity is drastically different, like driving, doing deliveries compared to sorting food packages, then you know they're very different things. It'd probably be 2 separate opportunities. So one of the next things we need to think about when you're creating an opportunity, because I've panned this out kind of sequentially for the questions you need to ask yourself when you're creating these opportunities by the screens that appear when you create the opportunities. So the next one, is it a fully managed or self-managed opportunity? Okay. Now, most opportunities are fully managed. Okay. If you choose a fully managed opportunity, you're saying, okay, yep, we're going to manage it inside TeamKinetic. Okay. The volunteer and provider manage the opportunity, both manage the opportunity within TeamKinetic. They're going to join the opportunity. They're going to join sessions potentially. They're going to log hours and leave feedback, and it's all going to be done within your TeamKinetic system. And for the vast majority, that is the case. Sometimes it tends to be for volunteer centres, and there's some volunteer centres amongst us here. Sometimes they create self-managed opportunities. And this, when I say they, I don't mean the volunteer centre, I mean providers of that volunteer centre. Okay, so imagine you've got a volunteer centre, they rarely create their own opportunities. It tends to be the case that, you know, they're offering a service, and then you've got all of these different organisations who need volunteers, who are providers essentially, and they're creating opportunities on that system. And that's great. In an ideal world, those providers, when they're creating opportunities, so not the volunteer centre themselves, but the volunteer centre's providers. So whether it's like the local tennis club or Friends of the Park, or, you know, whatever, it's a netball club or something, then you'd want them to create a fully managed opportunity, because that way all the hours are being logged in there, you know who's on there, you know all the information, all the activity that's going on those opportunities, which helps you with your reporting and gives you a better sense of what's going on. Okay, but sometimes there's certain providers, which they're usually large providers, like your Bernardo's or your Macmillans or something like that, where they say, well, actually, yeah, we've got our own volunteer system, and if it's TeamKinetic, it's fine. There's ways we can deal with that. We can link them together. But if it's not TeamKinetic, and they've got their own volunteer system, they say, well, I don't want to create the opportunity on our system, on our Bernardo's system, for example, then have to recreate it on your system. All I want to do really is utilize your volunteer workforce. You've got 1,000 volunteers on your system, and I want to tap into that because we need volunteers to help us out at Bernardo's. Now, so you're left in a situation, you want to be engaged with them. The volunteer centre still wants that relationship with Bernardo's, but at the same time, Bernardo's don't want to replicate an opportunity on two systems. So the better of the two evils, rather than just saying, well, no, it's you either have to recreate it on two systems or you know, sorry, goodbye, which is obviously not a good message, not a good way to do it. Then they would say, okay, well, why don't you just create a self-managed opportunity, which means that they enter the very minimal information, okay, opportunity name, it's like 3 or 4 fields or something, and the link. The key thing is opportunity name, and the bottom field that they enter in when they create it is the link taking the volunteer out to their Bernardo's volunteer system. Okay, so when they create a self-managed opportunity, they're entering in absolute minimal information, like 4 fields, and if the volunteer goes to it and they click on it, it will direct the volunteer out of your TeamKinetic system onto the registration page of their Bernardo's system. Okay, which means that allows Bernardo's to utilize your volunteer workforce. The downside of that, you've probably thought through by now, is, well, once they're on that Bernardo system, you don't know what they've done. The only thing we can track, and we do, is how many people have clicked that button and been redirected over to that Bernardo system. But in terms of how many have gone on to register there, how many hours have done the rest of it, we have no way of knowing that. Obviously, we can't tap into their system. But at least you've still got that relationship there, and with Bernardo's. Does that make sense? Any questions over these 2 options here? Okay. You can switch off the self-managed opportunities for providers. So if you ever think, well, actually, I don't want providers to ever do that, I want them always to manage it in our system, which a lot of people are in that situation. That's perfectly fine. You can actually switch off the self-managed opportunities for providers in the super admin menu.
Steve, can I ask a really quick question around that one? Probably, I don't know, maybe it's one we need to consider. Say you're working in partnership with an organization, so they're not on TeamKinetic as a provider. This is still something we could use, isn't it? But we would just be adding the information and linking them out. Like, say the partner was like, we're going to be the lead volunteer manager on it. So we could still use that, couldn't we, even though the partner may not be a provider on our system? That would still work okay.
You could, but there's still They're still a provider. So the person, this Bernardo's, they still have to be on there as a provider to even get to this page where they can click on create self-managed opportunity. So originally so the Bernardo's person would have to register as a provider, but as we know, it takes them about 30 seconds to do that.
Yeah.
But then once they're on as a provider, they can just click self-managed opportunity and enter in them 4 fields, and it's going to direct them over to whatever web address you put in here when you create the self-managed, when they create the self-managed opportunity. They put the web address in as google.com. When the volunteer goes to that opportunity and clicks on join, it's going to send them to google.com or the Bernardo's registration page or whatever else. So that's fundamentally what it does. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Now we're going to look at the restrictions interface. So there's kind of 2 main areas of restrictions within the system. So you probably recognize these from these pages from when you're creating the opportunities. One of them is opportunity application process. So these are like application restrictions, okay, which is saying, oh, the person must have completed these steps. Okay, they must have completed something before they're allowed on the opportunity. Okay, they must have completed a role, must have completed reference, must have applied application, must have completed, entered in their experience. So these are application restrictions. And these are ones on the right, the next page, which is opportunity restrictions. So these are what we call kind of absolute restrictions. Okay, what I mean is that there's no way of them, it's not like something they have to do. They either meet the criteria or they don't with these absolute or opportunity restrictions. Okay, they're either the right age or they're not. They can't change it, can't make themselves older. You know, they're either in the volunteer group or they're not. So yeah, that's the difference between the two. So we've got kind of application restrictions and then we've got kind of absolute restrictions here. Now here's a feast for the eyes, isn't it?
Steve, on that previous slide, can I just ask, so if we want to restrict an opportunity, can we do that either by putting them in a group or by letting them apply? Would the result be the same thing? So if we just made sure the people were in the group?
No, the group is an absolute restriction. So if they're not in the group, it will not let them join or apply for the opportunity. It will say this is restricted to a group you are not part of.
Okay.
If it's applying, it
they
still
need to
let
be in
them.
the group.
Yeah, it will literally won't they? Like the apply or the to be fair, this is kind of one which sits outside of these two. To be fair, whether it's apply or join, that comes after any of the restrictions. So if you look at this slide here, okay, try and absorb this a sec. Well, I'll explain this through here, and then it'll hopefully answer your
Thanks.
question. So the first thing the volunteer sees, okay, is like the search page when they're searching for opportunities, and there's a search page down here. What opportunities does the volunteer see? Well, they see all open opportunities. Okay, if you don't want them to see them, you close it. If you wanted to see them, you can open it again. Okay. It will also, the open opportunities, the key thing is it lets new people join the opportunity as well. Now, that's the only caveat to that is you can create an opportunity and you can mark it as open, but if it's marked also as being made secret, it means by being open, it's letting people it will let people get onto it, but the fact you've made it secret, which is one of the options, you create the opportunity, means that it's not visible in the search results. So first question is, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to make one secret? Anyone hazard a guess? Why would you want to create an opportunity that's not visible in the search pages?
Is that when you've got someone specific that you want to do it, so you don't want everyone to apply?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, maybe you've got maybe it's on the front desk and you've got kind of half a dozen people in mind who you know have got really good interpersonal communicational skills, and you say, I want to put this out there, but I want to give these 6 people here first dibs on this opportunity. What you can do is you can create it, the opportunity, make it open so people can get onto it. Remember, if it's closed, no new people can get onto it. It's open, new people can get onto it. So you want it open, but at the same time, you don't want to make it visible on the search pages, because then everyone's going to know about it, and then 6 people won't have first dibs, and that's what you want. So in that scenario, you can you make it open, you mark it as secret, but then only you know about the opportunity. Although people can get onto it, only you know about it. So no one's going to know it exists to try and get onto it. So you can promote the opportunity to certain volunteers, either via email, or there's a number of different ways you can do that. The promote options. So you can promote it to those 6 people, and then you and those 6 volunteers are aware of this welcome desk opportunity, and they can decide whether they want to join it. And then you might leave it a week and see if anyone's joined it, and then you might turn the secret to off, which means suddenly it's going to appear on all the search pages for anybody else who wants to join. You know, maybe it's meeting and greeting a famous person who's come along, one of your, you know, maybe it's like a wildlife trust, and King Charles now is turning up to do a ceremonial cut of a ribbon or something. You probably want to hand pick those people who are going to be with him. I'm going to meet him and take him around and this, that, and the other. And you probably want to give it to the people who have put in the most time. Okay, so that's another example where I've seen it used before, where they say, actually, I'm going to restrict this opportunity, so I'm going to make it secret and just promote it to those few volunteers first, because they've put in the years, you know, hundreds of hours of volunteering, and they've got good communicational skills. Probably another thing on your mind. Okay. The only other reason in terms of visibility that you might not see an opportunity is on the filters that you have on there. So we know there's filters, we can see them here, though it's quite small. You can filter by distance from a particular postcode. You can filter by home opportunities, which is this option here, which means, do you want to include opportunities they can do from home in these search pages? Why is that such a prevalent filter? Well, the reason being is, by default, when the volunteer is logged into the system, it's going to show opportunities by distance from the volunteer's home to the opportunity. Well, if the opportunity, they can do the opportunity from home, then that distance is 0 miles, which means that opportunity by default will end up being at the top of everyone's search pages, which is why we have this filter here. So people can say, I'm not bothered, don't include home opportunities. I want to get out and about. I want to mix up. I don't want to be sat at home doing volunteering. I want to get out and do some volunteering. Okay. You can also set the default of that. So what the default, whether it's defaulted to include home opportunities or exclude home opportunities within the super admin menu. And there's loads of other filters down the left-hand side. But obviously, main point is filters can also will also affect what opportunities the volunteer sees. So once the volunteer's seen this opportunity in the search page, the next thing is, what restrictions are in place? We've got these absolute restrictions in green. Then we've got these application restrictions. And I mentioned these before, the difference between them. So if we take the absolute restrictions, things that the person has to be in a group, they have to be linked to a provider, they have to be over a certain age. There's nothing the volunteer can do about that. It's not asking them to go through a set process. Oh, you need to be inducted first, or you need a reference or anything. There's nothing they can do about that. They're either in that group or they're not. Now, obviously, they could phone the provider and say, "Can I be added to this group? I think I should be allowed on this opportunity." Yes, they can do that. But fundamentally, usually that's just a mistake by the provider by not including that person in the group. It's not something that should happen. You know what I mean? So we have the absolute restrictions, and then we have these application restrictions. So it's saying, okay, yes, you can get on this, but you need to have completed these things first. You need to have completed a generic induction on the system, or have a reference or two, or have a background check, or have completed a role. Okay, we're going to come on to these in a bit more detail in a sec. But once they've met these restrictions, if they've met any restrictions, and all the restrictions, and only if they've met all of the restrictions, okay, so I'm going to say that again, only if they've met all of the restrictions, whether it's absolute or application restrictions, will it let them join or apply on the opportunity. Okay. So if they ask for a reference and they haven't completed the reference, they will not be able to join or apply for the opportunity. Okay, if it asks for a background check, they won't be able to join and apply until the background check is on. It will say this is restricted for people with a background check. Okay, so these are prerequisites to getting to the joining or applying phase from the volunteer's perspective. And then they choose whether they're, well, they don't choose. When you're creating the opportunity, you're obviously saying whether it's joining or applying. And if it's a joining opportunity, then that's it. The volunteer joins it. They may ask for experience. You can ask for experience, remember. I'll come on to in a bit more detail, which asks the volunteer to describe, what their experience is related to the opportunity they're trying to get on. Gives you a bit more information on how to utilize that volunteer, etc. But even if they don't ask for experience, when you go to a joining opportunity, that's it. They're on the opportunity. If you make it an applying opportunity, then there's extra steps that have to happen. The provider needs to approve or deny. They could deny it, but needs to review the applicant, the person applying, and approve or deny them. Okay, and only when they've been approved will it then let the volunteer choose the sessions. So if it's a joining one, go back to this joining one, and it's a session-based one, great. They click on join, and then they've got a list of sessions, and they're basically selecting what sessions they can attend. No problem. It won't stop them at any point. It doesn't require any action from the provider. If it's applying, it requires the first thing it's going to do. It won't let the volunteer get to choose any sessions. Okay. It will, first of all, it's waiting for the provider to approve the volunteer, like a job applicant. Approve the volunteer, and only when they've approved the volunteer will it ask the volunteer to choose what sessions they can attend. Now, if it's applying opportunity, but it's also flexible, then there is no sessions, is there? Because a flexible opportunity is like one very long session, starts today, goes on for 12 months. Okay. In which case, when they apply for it and the provider approves them, it just puts them onto the opportunity straight away, because there's no other step for that the volunteer needs to complete for a flexible opportunity. Okay, yeah, we're going to have a quick look first of all these absolute restrictions now in a bit more detail. Okay. So absolute restrictions will prevent certain volunteers from getting on the opportunity. They do not rely on a process being performed by a user, and there is nothing the volunteer can change to meet the requirements, as I said before. So examples we've got here are groups. Volunteer must be part of the volunteer group. So if you're creating an opportunity as an admin, you can have your own groups of volunteers, as you know, okay? And you can restrict it to that group, which means only volunteers in that group will be able to get onto it. For everybody else, it will say you are not part of this group. Providers can actually do the same. Providers have their own groups. Each provider can create their own groups of volunteers, okay, for whatever purpose they feel fit. And when the provider is creating an opportunity, again, they can restrict it to one of their groups. So the key thing out of this, as an admin, you can create your own groups, which every admin can see, okay, and you can restrict it to that group of volunteers. So only that group of volunteers can get on the opportunity. As a provider, you can create your groups, but it's just for you as a provider. No one else can see them. But you can restrict your opportunities. The provider can restrict their opportunities to only volunteers in their provider group. The other option is linked to the provider. What do I mean by that, linked to a provider? Anyone hazard a guess and know what I might mean by linked?
So linking to a provider is when they can access all of their volunteer information. So say a volunteer has registered but not directly to that provider, it means by linking them they can access all that information. Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. It's a good description. So basically every provider, there's 4 ways that a volunteer can be linked to a provider. The main way is the way you probably were thinking. The volunteer joins an opportunity offered by that provider. They're linked to that provider. Second is, as an admin, you can manually link a volunteer to any provider. Third way is a provider can invite volunteers to register on the system. And when that volunteer registers on the system, we realize that, right, but the invite came from that provider. So we're going to link them to that provider because they must have some affiliation with them. And the fourth way is if they register via provider's profile page, which don't worry about, it's quite rare that happens. But there's 4 ways that it can be linked. But the main way is the volunteer joins one of their opportunities. That's over 90% of the cases. By being linked to that provider, it gives that provider, first of all, the provider can see the volunteer in their volunteer search page, which means they can communicate with the volunteer. And they also have the ability to actually add the volunteer directly onto one of their opportunities, which I'll come on to shortly. Okay, so they have an element of control. They can communicate with the volunteer, and they have that element of control if the volunteer is linked to them as a provider. Okay. So you might say, I'm going to restrict this opportunity just to linked to volunteers. Usually as providers tend to do it, I'm going to restrict it just to my linked volunteers, which means that you can see the list of people. It says, I only want one of these volunteers who's already linked to me to be able to get onto these opportunities. I don't want any new ones. And then there's age limits. I think that's self-explanatory. Some people say, well, why have you got like a maximum age limit in there? Well, sometimes there is physical. Sometimes we've had it in the past where there's very physical things, and for insurance reasons, they've had to put a maximum age if they're doing dry stone walling or this, that, and the other. That's quite rare, that one. Usually minimum ages are quite common. Okay. So the next one is application restrictions. So we're looking at this red one down here now. So find the opportunity, application restriction. So the main application restrictions you've got is induction. The volunteer must have completed induction. And the confusion I often see is people think about the induction onto the opportunity. They go, this opportunity, yes, it does have an induction. We give them an orientation around whatever they're doing, sorting food or whatever it is. There's an induction that they have to do. Well, that's not what it's talking about. It's talking about the generic induction onto the system. So you may or may not have that. Most people don't, to be fair. Maybe like 30% do. Where you're saying, yes, for every volunteer, there is a standard induction. They have to watch this video. They have to sign this form. They have to and they all have to do the same thing. Okay, so it's generic induction it's talking about. And you can restrict it and say, well, don't let any volunteer on this opportunity unless I've marked them as completing that generic induction. Okay. The kind of example I could give for that would be maybe if you're in a wildlife park, into wildlife today, that's on my head now, my brain today. If you're in a wildlife park and you say, okay, I've got some things which are just picking up litter, okay, and then I've got all these other roles which are much more involved and they require a full kind of, a full induction and orientation around the park and health and safety forms being filled. But the litter picking one, I don't need any of that. I just need warm bodies. Okay. Well, that's when you might create a load of opportunities which require that generic induction. But then you've got one opportunity that doesn't, because that's just litter picking and you don't need them to be inducted. I've gone through that generic induction. Background checks.
Steve, sorry, can I ask a quick question? I haven't actually looked into inductions before. Can you set a different induction per opportunity, or is it like you set one generic induction that I'd set for all my volunteers and then they opt in or opt out for that one? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's one generic induction. Okay, so it's the induction. So it's usually, for example, if you have hospices is quite a common one where they have a generic induction. Imagine a hospice, you've got all these vulnerable people in there. So they say, okay, we need a reference, we need a references, criminal background checks, all this kind of stuff. Sign this form, watch this video, and all this. Okay, that they need every volunteer to do that. No one can be anywhere near the hospice unless they've done all that stuff. Okay, that's their generic induction that every volunteer has to do. Now, if it's something to do specific to an opportunity, on this particular opportunity, then you need to have the opportunity induction. Well, that's not what we're talking about here. The induction is nothing to do with any particular opportunity. It's the generic induction after the volunteer is registered that every volunteer, or the vast majority of volunteers, will have to do. That's what it's talking about. So it's not specific to any opportunity is the key thing.
Okay, super. Thank you.
No worries. Background checks. So we know what these are. Again, the volunteer has to complete a background check. This can sometimes be be a bit sticky, because sometimes people say, well, I want them to get on the opportunity, then I'm going to do a background check. But remember, that's not going to work in this scenario, because these are all prerequisites. They have to have the background check in order to get on the opportunity. And the same with the reference. They have to have the reference be able to get onto the opportunity. They have to have completed the role to be able to get on the opportunity. So all these things here, they're prerequisites to getting on the opportunity. So you've got to ask yourself the question. It's not like a case of, oh, I want the volunteer to join the opportunity, then I'm going to have a chat with them, and after they've been on the opportunity 1 or 2 times, I'm then going to ask them for a reference, a background check, and a role. Well, in that case, then you can't restrict the opportunity by these things, because you're restricting the volunteer from getting on it in the first place. These things are a prerequisite to getting on the opportunity. For those of you who are not sure what roles are essentially a set of hoops that the volunteer needs to go through before they can get onto an opportunity. So say if you had an opportunity and it was driving the minibus or something like that, you might have a role called driving, and you say, well, if anyone's driving any of our vehicles, then I need to have seen their driving license. I need to have signed this form. They need to have had an orientation around the vehicles. They need to have And so you create this driving role, which is a set of hoops the volunteer needs to go through before they can get onto any opportunity which is related to driving. Okay. Again, it's a prerequisite. So when that volunteer goes to that opportunity, it will say, you can't get on this yet until you've completed this role. And then they'll join the role, and then it will direct them through, okay, watch this video, do this. I've got to check your driving license. Da, 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 da. And then only when the admin has completed them on the role will it let them go on to actually join in the opportunity, because it's a prerequisite, like with all the rest of these things. So like I say, these things here, restrictions, all prerequisites before they even get to the point of joining or applying. So the next one is asking for experience. So why would you ask for experience? Any ideas? Volunteers gone on there, they've clicked on the join button or the apply button, a window's popped up saying, please describe in a few words why you are suited to this opportunity. I think is the wording of it.
Is it just so you can decide whether they are actually suitable for the opportunity or not?
Yeah, that's the key. There's two sides to this, but that is the main point. Yeah, absolutely agree. Anyone hazard a guess at the second reason why you might want to ask for experience? To see whether the suitable was the first answer, which is correct. There's also a second scenario where I've seen it used quite usefully, which
Maybe
is
to understand the level of induction or support that they'll require.
Yeah, in a roundabout way. Yeah, you're right. The way I was going to word it was so you knew how to best utilize the person on the day. Okay, but that kind of falls into basically what you said. So yeah. So yeah, because you might say, well, this person here has very little experience doing this thing, so I need to put them with that person over there who is highly experienced. Or you might read to say it's like running an event, setting up equipment at an event, and then the person asks for experience, says, I've set up the equipment for this event for 3 years running. You might think that's useful to know that. You think, well, I'm going to put that person in charge of them 2 people there, because that person knows what they're doing and knows where the equipment is and how to set it up. Okay, so it allows you to think in advance how you can best utilize the volunteers you've got on the day, and how to group them together, maybe doing group work. So this is the window that pops up down here. This opportunity has prerequisites. You'll need to add the experience before joining. Okay, it's quite an easy thing. They just type in their experience there. And where does it appear then? Once they put in their experience, it appears on the provider or the admin side, the opportunities page. When you go to the opportunity kind of management page where you see the list of all the volunteers, see the volunteers tab is highlighted here. You'll see the name of the volunteers, and on the right hand side under the experience column there's a little green icon, question mark icon, and it'll only be there if they've typed in experience. When you click on it, it tells you what the experience is. Okay, so it's very easy when the volunteers are on there for you to click down and either say, okay, I'm going to do a shortlisting process here and figure out which people are actually suitable for it, and quickly click down there, rather than looking at everyone's qualifications and profiles and the rest of it, which they could do. They could all add their qualifications and CVs. They don't tend to, though. But they could do. It's easier just to look at the experience, click down them all. Okay, that person's going to make the cut. That person's going to make the cut. Or that person, I'm going to put with that group over there because they're really experienced setting up this equipment. This is the other example I gave. To assist you in deciding to approve or decline an applicant, example, if you're recruiting a netball coach, you probably want to know what experience a volunteer they have of netball. Have they been coached before? Do they know the rules, etc.? That's a good example. Okay. And to assist you in deciding how best to utilize the volunteer on the day. Okay. So one of them, the first example is the example you just gave, whether to approve or decline them. We'll have a look at their experience and see if they're going to make the cut. And the second one is how to utilize them on the day. So you are going to accept them all, but it just lets you know how you're going to utilize them. Opportunity restriction scenarios. Okay. So a litter picking opportunity. Let's think about this when we're creating this opportunity. It's a litter picking opportunity. So would we make it secret, you think?
No.
No. We wouldn't, would we? No. Would it be something they do from home? Probably not. So the filter wouldn't probably be set to, it wouldn't make a difference. Unless you said you're litter picking in your local area, which, yeah, could be a case. Next one is restrictions. Would you restrict it in any way, you think?
Maybe age.
Maybe age. So what's your thinking? Expanding that for me.
Depends if it's lone working or not.
If it's what, sorry?
Lone working.
Ah, yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
You quite often get lots of litter along roads as well. So yeah, from a safety point of view, you might want extra consideration around that. Yeah, restricting by age, for example. Make sure someone's got a parent or guardian if they're a certain age.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that could be a good one. Yeah. You probably wouldn't require any more than that, though. I don't think. I think that's the age is the only one I could see on there, because it's usually just warm bodies you need for litter picking, isn't it? So I can't imagine you'd have any of the kind of restrictions in place. Would it be applying or joining, you think?
Joining, just
Joining.
Yeah, joining.
Yeah, it'd be joining, wouldn't it? There's no application, just warm bodies, like you say. There's no application process there. So yeah, pretty straightforward, that one. I think you pretty much nailed it there. Scenario B. Scenario B. Under 12s basketball coach and assistant. Okay, so picture that. Under 12s basketball coach and assistant. Okay, so would you make it secret? Probably not, would you? I don't think there's any reason to make it secret. You're not promoting it to any particular volunteer. Oh, maybe, but I doubt it. You probably open that one up. Okay. What any restrictions you might put in place? You think? What kind of restrictions?
Yes, I would restrict it. I would want background checks, definitely. I'd want DBS checks and to know experience, and probably have met them and things to make sure they're not inappropriate for under 12-year-olds.
Yeah, definitely background check. I agree. Definitely in there. You may want a reference as well. Sometimes people have background checks. They also require a reference.
I'd also probably want qualifications of kind of coaching and working with young people type thing.
Yeah, so you might specify some kind of qualification, because you can when you create the opportunity, can't you? It says what's the wording of it now? It's like experience, required experience or something. It's on the first page. So yeah, you might specify something like that, some kind of qualification. You would definitely make it an applying opportunity, because you don't want to say, right, once you, if you're saying joining, you're saying, right, once you click on the join button, you're on the opportunity. And that's not the case with this. You want to filter out which applicants should be successful, looking at their experience and their qualifications and the rest of it. I agree. Age limits, you'd probably have an age limit on there as well. You might think, well, actually, yeah, it's got to be over the 12s, maybe over 18. If they're 16, teaching under 12s could be a little bit too close in the ages. So you might use any of those things down there, I suppose. Okay, and it definitely would be applying. Right, next one. Moving dead branches using a quad bike. Flipped over now, and a different kind of opportunity here where, they've got to get on a quad bike and they're going to be dragging branches around a big wildlife park or something like that. So first of all, are you going to make it secret? Probably not. There's no real reason to it's not like something you want to hide and then you want to open up later on. It's not that kind of thing. You probably put restrictions against it. You might restrict it by a group. Maybe if you've got a group of people who are already qualified and been checked to use the quad bikes, then you might just restricted that group of volunteers. Age limits, maybe you got insurance limitations on there, which says they have to be over 21 or something like that. You could use age limits. Anyone else? Anyone else want to hazard a guess? Anything else you might want to include?
You'd have to have an induction process, obviously, around safety, health and safety.
Yeah, I agree. It wouldn't be this one though, because this is a generic induction onto the system. But we're talking about, I agree what you're saying, by the way, but it's not a generic induction, which is this restriction is actually talking about. It's an induction to use the quad bikes, okay, which could be, may well be a role. That's something you might set up as a role, and you say, a bit like the driving, I mentioned the driving example before, where you'd say, okay, well, before you can get on this opportunity, you need to have had orientation around the quad bikes, signed this form, done this X, Y, and Z. And only when you've completed this role will we let you use any of the quad bikes in the park.
Steve, just a question on that. As part of the roles, can you have, for example, if they're just agreeing to something, so it's like a policy, so it might be, I agree to drive under 20 miles an hour on site, and I agree not to lend it to anyone else or use it for inappropriate things. Can that be just a checkbox that they can do within TeamKinetic, or do we? Yeah,
it could be. It could work like that. Yeah.
Like I've read and agreed to this. Yeah. Where would that be? Would that be within the role itself?
Within the role itself. So you create the role itself, and then you'd put that step in. You'd say, I agreed to do this. I agreed to do X, and I agreed to do Y. And then the volunteer would be forced to say, you can't join or apply for this opportunity until you complete this role. Okay. And then it would say join role or apply for role or something like it says. They click on apply for role, then it comes up with the steps. Oh, do you agree to do this? And they have to change it to yes. And then they change the option, the second one to yes. And then only when they've done that, is it down to the admin then to say, yes, I accept the fact, I agree that this person has completed this particular role. Now, what we've got coming up, I don't want to go into too much, but with the roles, because we've got this thing in the pipeline now called flows, which we're working on, which is essentially the ability to do those steps, but it allows, rather than it being just a prerequisite to getting on the opportunity, this thing called flows allows you to do it even after they join the opportunity. So for those scenarios where you say, well, I want them to be able to join and apply for the opportunity, and once they've done all that, then I want to make sure that they've had the orientation around the quad bike, make sure that they've, so it's kind of post joining the opportunity steps that you want them to do, and the flows will allow you to do that, and that's something that's in development now. It will also, the flows thing as well will also help you post registration steps. So when you say, when a volunteer is registered, we want all volunteers to do this, go through this hoop, and this hoop, and this hoop. The flows is always is basically around allowing you to do that stuff as well. So it's a set of steps that you can assign to different parts of the system, either post-registration, pre-joining an opportunity, or after you've joined an opportunity, and it will force the volunteers down those steps.
That sounds more like how we do our onboarding now, doesn't it? So
yeah, we've noticed that I've kind of noticed that sometimes it gets a bit sticky, because they say, well, yeah, but I want them to get onto the opportunity before I ask them to do those things. I don't want I was going to force them to do those things without me knowing that they want to get onto that opportunity, So that's where it came around. So like, okay, I have to rethink this. So this flows.
Yeah, that makes much more sense. Yeah.
I agree. It'll be very useful for a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's coming the latter end, third or fourth quarter, I think, all this year. Okay. Overriding restrictions. So you can, all those restrictions we just spoke about then, any administrator or provider can just override them. They can just go to the opportunity, click on the plus button next to the session they want to put them on. Okay, or if it's a flexible opportunity, they still do it the same way. They click on the plus button, and then they type in the volunteer's name, and it adds the volunteer to the opportunity. And that will ignore doesn't care about age, doesn't care about your role, doesn't care about background checks. It ignores all of it. It says, well, you're running the opportunity. If you want to add this person in there, I'll assume that you are happy for this person to be on that opportunity, despite the fact that they haven't been checked for all of these prerequisites. So yeah, so you can always override it and add volunteers in there. Oh yeah, sorry, one thing I did want to say on this screen as well, sorry, I forgot to mention it, is you can add volunteers in individually, but you can also add volunteers in bulk using this button up here. Okay, so if you said, I want to add this volunteer, or I've got this volunteer who wants to be on said they can turn up on the Tuesday and the Wednesday, great, you just probably add them individually like this. If you said, I've got these 3 volunteers and I want them to be on 25 sessions, well, that's a lot of clicks there, and you wouldn't do that. You'd use the add volunteers function, which is like a bulk add volunteers function. So it allows you to specify these are 3 volunteers, and then it just shows you all the sessions, and you can just say, all right, add them to all these 3 volunteers to all of these sessions here, and it will just do it all at once.
Steve, is there anything in the pipeline around volunteers being able to do bulk, like adding themselves on sessions? Because that's something that would be of interest if possible at some point.
Yes, there is. Yeah, in the next version, I've picked up on that as well. The same ability. There's the ability to. So there's a couple of things that are coming in the next version, 2.6. One of them is when you're adding volunteers in bulk, rather than, because you imagine that you're choosing your 3 volunteers and you've still got a list of all these sessions down here. What it allows you to do is it's specified by day. Say add these 3 volunteers to every session that takes place on a Monday, a Wednesday, and a Saturday, and it will automatically filter out those and add those volunteers to those specific days. So there's ways, and again reflecting that on the volunteers side as well. So yeah, that's good.
That sounds really great, Steve. I think that would be really helpful, because we do have like Friday groups, Tuesday groups. That makes sense. Brilliant.
Sure. Yeah, there's even there's the ability as well, something that might interest you, kind of slightly deviating off what we're talking about, but when you're creating flexible opportunities, okay, so when you create a flexible opportunity where you're saying it starts today and it goes on for a year, it also has the ability for you to say, yeah, but these are the days we're actually running that flexible opportunity. So it's not creating sessions. It's not saying that, all right, because you could just create sessions, couldn't you, and say, oh, it's Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. But it's not. If you don't want to do that, you say, well, actually, I just want a flexible opportunity. They join it, but when they join it, these are the days. I'm going to work it around their availability, but it's still going to have to take place on one of these days because they're the only days I'm in. So you can specify on a flexible opportunity what days the volunteer could potentially come in, and that gets reflected on the volunteer side. But it doesn't go as far as creating a rota like the sessions does. Okay, you just informing them. Yeah. So that definitely, there's quite a few you'll use that. Okay, promoting and sharing opportunities. So we know about make the opportunity secret. Why would you do this? We spoke about that, those reasons there. Sorry, on the right hand side here, if you haven't noticed, this is one of the screens you see when you're creating the opportunity. Like I say, we're working through it sequentially here, what you have to choose when you create an opportunity, and this is the next one after the restrictions and the join in applying. Okay, so we've got secret opportunity. We spoke about that. Pin opportunities. Any idea why you would pin an opportunity to the top of what it's going to do? When you do that, it's going to make that opportunity be at the top of every volunteer search page. Why would you want to do that? Hazard a guess.
Something urgent that you need to get filled quite quickly.
Bingo. Exactly. Yeah. That's why you do it. You want it. It's nearly always that you want it filled quickly. But what you have to remember when you pin it, remember to unpin it. Otherwise, I've seen people do it, they pin it and then they forget about it. And then someone else pins another one, they forget about it. And then someone else does the same. Before you know it, you've got 3 opportunities appearing at the top of every volunteer search page, regardless of how far away they are from the volunteer. And then you get phone calls of volunteers saying, yeah, the system's broke. The search doesn't work. It keeps showing me these opportunities that are miles away. And then when you look into it, you go, oh yeah, we've marked them all, we pinned them to the top and we forgot about it. I've seen that a few times. So just be aware, if you're pinning them, make sure that either they're going to end, they're going to close soon, like which means they're going to disappear from the search pages. So you don't have to worry about the fact that they're at the top because they're going to disappear. Or if they are going to be there, make sure you unpin them as well at some point. Share opportunity with link-wide network. So for those who don't know, link-wide, TeamKinetic is unique in this, is we allow you to link with other TeamKinetic systems. If you actually go onto your opportunities and providers, For those who are not linked, okay, in the admin menu, you go down to shared opportunities. If you're not linked to anybody, you will see a list of all the TeamKinetic users in your area, and it will show by distance how far away they are. And you might want to have a look at them and think, actually, maybe we could link with that system there. Because by linking to another system, it means you can share your opportunities to not only appear for your volunteers, but also to appear for their volunteers as well. So I'll give you an example of that. In Manchester, we've got Manchester City Council. They've got a system, our first customer actually, 16 years ago. Still with us, which is good. And they are linked through to Manchester Metropolitan University and the University of Manchester, okay, because they want to share their opportunities with those students. Okay. So they link up, which means that when the students go to their search pages, imagine I'm a student at University of Manchester, I go to the search page, I'm not just seeing the ones that are being offered by the university, I'm also seeing the ones that are being offered by Manchester City Council, okay, which is good for the student because they get more experience, yada, yada, yada. And you can also create, with that linking, like one-way links. So that particular one is called a one-way link, which means that none of the opportunities created on the university system are visible to people who have registered on the Manchester City Council system. Because obviously the ones that are created on the university system are just for the students. So they only want it to appear on their system. But the Manchester City Council ones, they want them to appear on their system and also the university system. So, but fundamentally, there's a thing called share with a link-wide network, which means you can share your opportunities across multiple systems. And we also have share the opportunity with other national systems. So this is like Do It, Big Help Out, which is kind of Do It driven as well. People want to do that. And all that does is it appears on their Do It system as an advert. When they click on the link, it will direct them back to that opportunity in your TeamKinetic system, and it'll ask the volunteer to register on your TeamKinetic system. Again, you can switch that on or off in settings, these things. Any questions over that, either link-wide networks or national opportunity sharing? No, good. Okay, should I use an event? Does anybody here use events? Pipe up if anyone uses events. Give an example of what you might. Yep. Okay. Do you want to what kind of event? Okay.
So it's the first time we're trialing it, but we've wanted to connect a group of opportunities together under one. So we do surveying across the county, but we wanted all the opportunities to be linked. So we've set up individual opportunities by nature reserve. So we're trialing it at the moment, but it seems like the kind of thing that might work for us.
Yeah, that's a really good example. So an example you just gave there, it fundamentally comes down to you're trying to make it easy for the volunteer to get to the opportunities they're interested in. So if you've got 5 nature reserves, and you know that one of the key things the volunteers are interested in when they're searching for opportunities is, they tend to be most interested in which nature reserve it's on, because there's ones that are, maybe it's one that's local to them or one that they just really like, whatever reason. Parking's easy, can be anything you want. That's something you feel that's interesting for the volunteer. That's one of the key ways that they kind of interested in picking out the opportunities. Well, yeah, you could create them as events and name each of the events, each of the nature reserves. Okay. Is another example? I think I heard another hand go up.
Yeah, we would use it actually just for events. So things like Christmas, when we have multiple different volunteer opportunities on each site, just to group them all together so people can visualize them easier. Yeah,
absolutely. It's good for that as well. Yeah. It could be like you say, events, literally in the way that it's like a Glastonbury is an event. It could, Glastonbury would have its own system, but imagine like a smaller event. You say, well, this event, you've got somebody who's people here are doing the car parks, people are meeting and greeting, people are doing litter picking, all these different things. And they might start and end at different times, but they're all part of the same event. And if you think that volunteers are interested in volunteering on an event, that's one of the key ways that they're going to decide decisions they're going to, the key factors they're going to consider when joining an opportunity is if it's part of that event or not. Then you would create it as an event to make it easy for the volunteer. So the way it works is once you link it to an event, so you might link 2 or 3 opportunities to an event, could be 20 opportunities to an event. And when the volunteer goes on the search page, they see a list of events on the right-hand side here. And every event, when you create an event, it asks you to upload an image. You have a title for the event, an image, and also a description as well, okay, which is specific to the event. And then when they click on this, they will see that image with a title, the description of the event, and then underneath they will see all the opportunities that you've linked to that event. So it's very easy for the volunteer to say, I want to be part of Glastonbury. Click. Okay, now I can see every opportunity that's taken place at Glastonbury. Bad example, but you get the idea. Okay. Also, for each event has its own unique web address. So if you're sending emails out about, I don't know, your summer festival, and you've got an event called 2025 Summer Festival, then when you're sending an email out, the link you'd probably put in that email would probably be the link to the event, because that's what the email is about, rather than just, you know, a link to each individual opportunity. Just have their link to the events page. So events have a title, image, a description, and they have their own unique web address, and they contain links to all the opportunities, well, a list of all the opportunities that you've linked to that event. Okay. All right. Volunteers downloading documents from an opportunity. So at any stage, when you get to this stage here, after the events, you can opportunity documents, upload a document for join volunteers to download. And the way it appears, when the volunteers join the opportunity, when they're on the opportunity, they go to it and they see on the left-hand side, opportunity documents, and they can see whatever documents you've added in there. Okay. What kind of documents might you add to an opportunity? Pick some names out.
Map layout, if it's like a field with stalls or something like that, so people knew where they were on a particular stall or something, like car parking areas.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, car parking areas would be useful. Yep. Anyone else has it, I guess?
Risk assessments.
Risk assessments, another good one. Yep. Yeah, I tend to see that, like maps. You said the car parks. That was one of the examples you usually give, like a map of the area. Maybe imagine this is for a marathon opportunity. This is where you might add the map showing all the different water stations, and then you'd be communicating to the volunteers. Okay, you 3, you're going to water station 3, and they know where water station 3 is because you've added the map showing all the water stations to the opportunity. Added that file to the opportunity. Okay. Again, it might be risk assessment. You might say, okay, I want you to, before you turn up on the day, please complete the risk assessment form attached to the opportunity. Great, and then they complete it and they can bring it along on the day. You can also allow volunteers to upload documents to an opportunity. Okay. So that's the next page when you're creating the opportunity. Allow volunteers to upload files to the opportunity, and you can put in a short description. And from the volunteers side, once they're on the opportunity, they can see upload post-opportunity files with that description that you put in. Please feel free to upload any photos you took on the day. Okay. So again, this could be photos they took on the day. It could be a completed risk assessment form. So you could have all the completed risk assessment forms before you've even seen them in person. Okay. Health and safety form, same kind of thing. Keeping in mind that the only people who can see when a volunteer uploads a file to the opportunity, the only person who can see that file is the provider of the opportunity, the person running the opportunity. Obviously, admins, you can see and do everything, so just assume that's always the case, but it's only that provider who can see that opportunity. No other volunteers on that opportunity can see it. Sometimes I worry, I hear people mention. Just the provider. So the only or the volunteer themselves who's uploaded it, obviously they can see it, and the provider of the opportunity. So if it's photos, you might say, well, I don't want them to upload photos because I don't know who's in the background. I need to get, I need to make sure that, we've got the rights to show, to include these people's faces and this, that, and the other. Well, that's fine because the person running the opportunity, the provider of the opportunity, is the only person who can see those photos. So they can make that judgment call then. yes, I know that person said has consent to use their photo, so yeah, I can use this photo. Okay, any questions over that, over downloading or uploading files? No. Okay, down to the last 10 minutes now. Opportunity surveys. Does anyone use opportunity surveys? Just curious. I don't tend to hear many people using it. It surprises me.
Yeah, we recently tried it. Yeah,
How-
it went quite well. We did it over Christmas for feedback.
Yeah, yeah. Any kind of yeah, did it work well? What did you run so the way this works, I should explain this to people to know really. So the way this works is when you create the opportunity, you get to the next step, which is post opportunity options. And obviously allow volunteers to upload the files. That's what we just spoke about. And then you've also got post opportunity surveys. Okay. Now the system doesn't allow you to create the survey in our system. It's not a survey system. It's not Google Forms or SurveyMonkey or anything like that. It's a volunteer system. But what you can do is you've changed that to yes. You can put in it'll ask you to put in the link to the SurveyMonkey or to your Google Forms, because all of them will have their own unique URL, unique web link. You add them in there, and then when the volunteers join the opportunity, they've got on the left-hand side here, post opportunity survey, and they click on that green button, and then it will direct them to SurveyMonkey survey or Google Forms, wherever you've done it. Now, obviously, the information that they enter and you assessing that information, that's done on SurveyMonkey, on your Google Forms, wherever you do that. So it's just a point of directing them out to the survey. But it can be useful. Okay, sessions versus flexible. This is the final bit we're going to do. Demo this. Sometimes some confusion how this works. So when you're creating an opportunity, get to this bit here, put in litter picking. You've all seen this page. Okay, next we get to the image. I don't know which one. It's litter picking. I'll just choose that for now. You choose a location. We've seen this 100 times. Fully managed or self-managed. Fully managed. Blah blah blah. Restrictions. Let's get through all these. You see, these are all the ones we just worked through one at a time sequentially. Promoting and sharing. Opportunity documents. Post opportunity options. There's a survey one we just spoke about. And then we get to sessions or flexible. Sometimes people get confused over which ones of these to use. So a session-based opportunity is when you want to create like a rota. Okay, so I want to know I've got litter picking every Sunday for the whole year. Okay, that's great, but I want to know how many people are turning up each Sunday, so I know how many litter pickers to bring along. Okay, that would be a session-based opportunity. If you do flexible, it means that you don't want a rota. You don't know exactly what time the volunteer is going to turn up. Okay, you're going to work it around their availability. So maybe if it was like Friends of the Park and you had an opportunity which was gardening, and then you've got some volunteers, all retirees, and they know the code for the little shed to get into the gardening equipment, and they just go there whenever they're available, in their own time, and they let themselves in, get the tools out, do the digging, and do some gardening. Okay, that's fine, brilliant. That's your flexible. That'd be a flexible opportunity because you don't know the exact time and duration the volunteer is going to be there for, just around their availability. Maybe a flexible opportunity might be, or another good example is if you said I want a netball coach every Tuesday night for the whole year. Okay, well, you want to know, or a netball coach assistant would probably be better. Well, you want to know exactly which Tuesday nights they're going to turn up. So that'd be a session-based one. But then also for the same netball club, you say, well, we need a chairperson, someone, I don't know, the secretary, club secretary or something like that. Well, you don't know when those meetings are going to be for the board meetings are going to be at that netball club. So there's no point, you can't create any sessions, in which case you make it a flexible opportunity. Starts today, goes on for a year. Yes, you're going to be club secretary, whatever it is. And we will tell you, oh, by the way, it's next Wednesday, the next meeting. Oh, is it? Okay, right, see you there, no problem. Okay, so you're working it around, you don't know in advance when they need to turn up, basically. And not necessarily working around their availability, but you don't know in advance when they're going to, you have to discuss when they're going to turn up directly with a volunteer. Okay. So the next thing is, what about these individual sessions? So if I'm saying it, let's go for the litter picking one. Okay. As well, if I'm doing litter picking every Sunday for the whole year, I could create that using add sessions individually. And I could pick 52 sessions down here. And I could pick my Sunday. Okay. But that means I've got to put in every Sunday for the whole year. And I've got to change the time. So it's at 12 o'clock for the whole year. And the duration, it's 2 hours we do it for the whole year. Obviously, that's going to take an age to do that. Okay. So there's a better way of doing it, which is add recurring sessions. Okay, which lets me just say, it starts on Sunday and it takes place at 12 o'clock for 2 hours, and it goes on every Sunday for 12 months. Bang. That's going to do the exact same thing I was trying to do before, but it's a lot faster. Okay. So both of these buttons end up at the same finishing line, a load of sessions being created. If I said it was litter picking for an event I'm running this weekend, well, I probably wouldn't choose recurring. I'd probably choose individual ones and say, well, it's only on for 2 days. So I'll just pick my 2 sessions and put in the dates for the 2 sessions, one on Saturday, one on Sunday. Okay. So there's no right or wrong answer which one of these to choose. It just depends on how you're setting it up. But one way will be faster than the other. Okay. And for flexible opportunities, it just adds a start date, end date. That's it. For both of them, you've got this sign up closing date, which sometimes confuses people. So even this one, you have sign up closing date as well. The closing date is the date of which the opportunity is going to close. Now, if I create this opportunity here with 2 sessions on it, once that second session had finished, it will automatically close the opportunity. Remember what we mean by close. We mean a closed opportunity means no new volunteers can get onto it. It's closed for new applications. Okay, so either closed or open for new applications. So if you say it's closed for new applications, well, once that last session's passed, it will automatically close it. It says, well, there's no sessions for the volunteer to go on there's no future sessions for this opportunity. There's no point having it open in the search pages. There's nothing for them to get onto. So it will automatically close it. But there are scenarios where you might say, I don't want to wait for that last session to pass before it closed. I actually want it to close before the first session. I want to close it so I can have a chance to speak to those volunteers and make sure everyone's aware of what they've got to do and where they're turning up and all the rest of it. Okay, usually for events, this tends to happen. And that's when you would use a closing date in there. Okay, which means, a week before I'm going to close the opportunity. So no new people can get onto the opportunity. And then during that week, I'm going to make sure everyone's aware of what they've got to do and where they're going to be. Okay. I think I've got a hand up there. Is that a question? I've got a ping there.
Yeah, Stephen, can you set up the closing date to be after the last session so it keeps it open for new people to jump on?
Well, look, no, you can't, because there's nothing for them to jump on. If it's after the last session, then imagine when they go to the sessions and they try to join the sessions, it shows the sessions, a list of sessions for them to join, and they have to click on, I can do that Sunday on my holiday that week. I can do the Sunday after. I do the Sunday after that. So they're choosing which sessions. If all of them are passed, then there's no sessions for them to join. So so that's why you can't. There's no point in trying to close it after the last session's passed. Okay.
Thanks.
Another hand up, I think. No worries. Another hand up.
Yes, thanks. I was going to ask, is it easy to open a session, an opportunity once it's closed? So you might just want to pause for a bit, or just to close it in another way and then open it again? Because I think
absolutely, it's quite common. So you'll get, so quite often you'll see maybe an issue happens on an opportunity, or maybe you think, oh God, I need to change the wording of that. I realize I've made a mistake. Maybe the location's wrong. There's a mistake in the way you've set up the opportunity. So I'm on an opportunity here, litter picking. Okay, and there may be 10 volunteers already on this litter picking one. Then I realize, oh God, I've made a mistake. Wait there a minute. There's a problem with this opportunity. I'm going to close it. Now, think what I'm doing. I'm closing new people getting on for getting onto the opportunity. That's what I'm closing. I'm
Mhm.
closing the ability for new people to get onto it. Those 10 people who are already on it, they won't know any difference. They won't even be aware of the fact I've closed it. I'm
Okay.
stopping any new people getting onto it. So I can close it. I can say, okay, I don't want any new people till I've sorted out this issue. There was a fight between two volunteers. Never heard of it, but between two volunteers. Okay, I'm going to sort out that issue. Now I've sorted it out, and we've had the inquiry and the rest of it. Okay, I'm going to reopen it now to back up for new volunteers to join. Okay.
So once it's closed, it's not like closed forever. It just means that it's not available for, it's not being searched and things like that.
Yeah, by closing it, you're closing it to any new people getting onto it.
Okay.
That's what you're doing, and which means it would hide it from the search pages. And even if they did find a way to get to it, it still wouldn't let the volunteers onto it because it's closed.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any more hands up? Any questions over there?
Yeah, so from my point of view, I'm thinking, so say I needed to recruit someone new for the ward, and I had some applications and got someone new, and then someone else left, so I'd have the opportunity open, then I'd close it when I've recruited, then I need someone else, and then I can mark it open again, and all the information is still there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's a few ways you could do that. I mean, you could set the maximum number of volunteers when you create an opportunity. So you could say maximum volunteers equals 1, which means once that one volunteer's been put onto the opportunity, you've added them to it, or they've gone through whatever they need to go through the hoops to get onto it, then it won't let any more volunteers get onto it. So this opportunity is full. It will actually, there's a setting in there to allow those volunteers to add themselves to a waiting list as well.
Mm.
So imagine you've got an opportunity and you just need them on the front desk and you need one person. Person's joined it, you say, brilliant. They've done it for 2 months and then they disappear off. You can mark them as left that opportunity. It opens up that spot then for another volunteer, different volunteer to get onto it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good, because you'll quite often get several applicants for something like being on the ward, and just because we've got the applicant, it doesn't mean they're going to go the whole course and actually start. So just because I've had one applicant, it doesn't mean then that I'm like, right, okay, that's it, we're sorted. So
oh no, it does a lot. Yeah, when you put restrictions on the volunteer, when you are creating an opportunity and it says maximum volunteers, it means maximum volunteers on the opportunity, not maximum applicants.
Yeah,
because we know that you're probably going to want as many applicants as you know. Let them all apply, but the reality is this is how many spots I've got to actually fill at the end of it. If there's no application process and it's just a joining opportunity, then once it's reached those maximum volunteers, it will then stop any more volunteers. It will say this opportunity is full. Do you want to add yourself to a waiting list?
And if someone withdrew themselves, then would it then open it up again for someone else to be able? Yeah, right,
it automatically emails everyone on the waiting list, telling them that a new spot has opened up, and they can go and join it if they want.
Lovely, thank you.
Okay, no worries. Any other questions? We're kind of 3 minutes over.
Yeah, I've got a really, really quick one, Steve.
Yeah, sure.
More of a clarification, because you said if you want to, make an edit, you can close the opportunity and then reopen it. Just checking that doesn't send out a automated email to say this opportunity's been closed then, because obviously if a session had changed, if a session had been cancelled, it would send out that email, but that's not the same for closing.
No, closing and opening opportunities doesn't send any emails out to any volunteers. Absolutely right, but you're absolutely right what you say. If you go in there and delete a session and the volunteers on it, it will email them.
Yeah.
Or if you add them, remove them from a session, it will email them. The only way to stop that, as you remember from your training sessions, is if you go to the mute emails option here, which will switch off any emails related to this opportunity. So now, if I go into sessions, now I've muted the emails in the summary tab. If I go into the sessions now and start adding or removing volunteers or deleting sessions, it won't send out any emails to anybody.
Super, thanks, Steve.
Okay, no worries. There's a little function on here for those of you who don't know as well. You're probably thinking, well, once I've added and moved all these volunteers around, how am I going to tell them what sessions are on? Well, if you go to volunteers, which lists all the volunteers on that opportunity, I haven't got any on this to show you, but then you select the volunteers, you can click on send confirmation email, which emails each volunteer showing them these are the sessions that you're on via email. So if you imagine like you're in an event, which is usually quite common with events, they'll have a load of sessions and then they'll say, great, I've got people on them, but I've got 10 people on this session. I've got one person on this session. So they say, look, okay, I'm going to move these people around now. Okay, I'm going to move them around to spread them out a bit to cover all my bases to make sure we can run the event. But then in order to move them around, they don't want the volunteer to get 20 emails while they're moving people from A to B and B to C. So what they would do is they would mute emails, go into the sessions, make all the adjustments, and then they would go back to the mute emails, resume emails. But then at that point there, you've got a load of volunteers on sessions that you put them on, which the volunteers aren't aware of yet. They're not aware of the changes that you've made. So that's when you might go into the volunteers tab, select the volunteers, if I haven't been listed for this, and then click on that send confirmation email. That's informing the volunteers there, the final step, telling them, okay, things have been moved around. These are the sessions you're on now. Okay. Any questions over anything I've covered today? I'm aware that was 6 minutes over.
Just a really quick one. If you create a flexible opportunity, is it possible to then change it to a sessions-based opportunity after the fact?
It is, yes. It is if you've got no volunteers on it. Problem you've got is if you've got volunteers on a session-based, or say volunteers on a flexible opportunity, and then you change it to a session-based one. Well, the system says, well, I can't do that because I don't know what sessions you want to put them onto. I've got 10 people on this opportunity. I can't put them. What sessions do I put them on? The first one, the last one, all of them? So it doesn't know. So it will prevent you from changing it once there's one or more volunteers on the opportunity. Anyway. So yeah, that's the convert and copy option down here. So you can convert. It allowed me to convert this one from to flexible. So this is a session-based opportunity. I can convert it to flexible because there's no volunteers on it. Otherwise, it will not let me do it. And you can also copy the opportunity. Lots of people use that. I'm guessing copying is a really useful function. Any more questions? Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, sorry if you covered this at the beginning before I had a chance to join, but I downloaded the handbook from the link and it gave me one about references, not what you've been talking about.
Right, I'll get that sorted out. I'll email everyone over the handbook for it.
Yeah, because I do like these to refer to, especially now because all the data has been migrated. I got an email this morning, so I'm now looking forward to having a play and getting everything set up now. So
yeah, no problem.
Thanks.
So I'll get that sorted. It'll probably be latter part of today. There's a couple of adjustments I've realised.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, no worries. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. Quick about roles, really. If you have a general induction role, but then for other opportunities you need a general induction and an extra role, can you add 2 roles to one opportunity? Or should you add the general induction onto the role that you need that's a bit more specialist?
I think you can only add 1 role to an opportunity at a time. I'm certain you can. I think it's limited to 1 role. You'd have to create like 2 individual roles and a role that covered both, I suppose.
Okay.
Both of those steps, I suppose, the only way around that. Yeah.
You could have it as different stages, though, couldn't you?
Say again, sorry?
You could do it as 3 stages. So you'd have stage 1 is general induction, stage 2. Okay.
Yeah, you could do like, but it have to be when you're creating a role as a prerequisite. You can only add 1 role as a prerequisite. You can't say, oh, you have to do this role, then this role, then this role. There's no way of doing that.
Yeah.
But yes, you have to think about what steps you've got into that role, included in that role. And you might have 5 steps in one role, 5 steps in another role, then another role. You've got 10 steps, which is a combination of both of them. You do kind of variations like that.
All right, thank you.
No worries. Any more questions?
Steve, I've got something really specific to ask you. Have you got a couple of minutes after?
Yeah, sure. I want to stay on the
Yeah,
call.
amazing. Thanks.
Yeah, no worries. Any other questions of anybody else? Okay. If there's no further questions, thank you very much for your time. I hope you found that useful. And yeah, this video will be available for reference from your help menu at the top of the screen at some point later today. Yeah, thanks for your time.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Bye.
No problem at all. Thanks. Bye-bye.